Namaste and welcome. Welcome to another edition of Live, Love, Engage. And I am so glad that you are with us today because I am delighted to welcome a woman who is someone who I have an affinity for. She's a creator. Let's put it that way. And I've always been fascinated with film. I mean, my whole life, frankly. So, and I know she's involved with that. But I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her in a second. But first off, I want to welcome Laura Lewis-Barr to Live, Love, Engage.
Thank you, Gloria. Very excited to meet you and be here.
Yeah, well, I am excited to have our conversation because we're going to be talking about fairy tales and Laura's journey. But first, I want to tell you who she is and you know what makes her an authority on this subject. So she has worked as a playwright, a freelance director, and theater professor for over 15 years. And after her play Cloistered Honey was made into a low-budget film, Laura began making independent short films. And she actually does stop motion shorts, and they have been screened at festivals around the country. And you can view them there on her website, and we'll share more about that information probably at the end of the broadcast. So make sure you're listening for that and watching. But I wanted to start, I definitely want to hear a little bit about your journey, but I really want to talk, I thought we'd start off with what gets you excited about doing stop motion animation, I guess that's called, right? And creating these types of works.
Wow. Such a great question. So imagine my basement, and I have a stage my husband built me, and I have Barbies on magnets, so they are in position for the next scene. And I go down to do my laundry, and they are waiting for me, ready to film the next. Right now I'm doing a short on the Holy Grail legend, the search for the Holy Grail. And I think something about miniatures has always just fascinated me. I think as somebody who's very interested in Jungian psychology, I would say they're archetypal. I would say that they resonate somehow deeply in us. And then one more thing, I originally started this because I bought a camera and I wanted to learn how to use it. And these would be my patient actors. And they are. And I just fell in love with stop motion and the ability to tell a story that way as I learned the camera.
Well, I love that, and it is interesting that you talk about the actors, because at least they're not going to talk back to you. They're not so you can just give them all the direction you want, and they're going to have to do it. So, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, I have to confess, I must be kind of a control freak because I adore, I've worked with live actors for a long time, and they don't always do what you ask them to, but the Barbies do.
That's cool. So talk to us a little bit about how really what brought you here. So, because I mentioned you were, or well, still are, you've worked as a playwright, you've been a director, you've been a professor, and now you're doing this. So how did that, what was that journey like? How did that evolve into what you're doing now?
Yeah, so one of my plays that you read, Cloistered Honey, was made into a film, and I was like, film lasts forever. Plays end at closing night. And I just became enamored. So I bought this camera, started making stop motion films, and then the pandemic hit. And wow, I was in such a sweet space because I could do this whole filmmaking in my house by myself. And so for 2 years during lockdown, and I had been teaching public speaking, that's where my career had gone. I couldn't do that anymore. And so I really experienced the joy of being a creator without any limits. I could make whatever I wanted and take my characters wherever I wanted. So that's generally how I got here. And now I'm on my 13th or 14th film. And since I love fairy tales, there's no end to the tales I can tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned earlier, you said something about Jungian philosophy or theory, and I want actually, no, before I go there, I want to actually ask you one other question before I dive into that, because I just realized that there may be people listening or watching this recording and they're like, what does she mean stop motion? So can you maybe just briefly explain, or maybe even, give an example? Maybe someone might have seen it and not really realize that that's what that is.
Sure. Well, I guess the Gromit movies are stop motion, if you've seen those. And it's essentially taking a photograph one after another and putting them together in a sequence. So I move a Barbie just a tiny bit, take a photo, tiny bit, take a photo. And eventually there's a movement that is like a live action.
Oh, very cool. And I imagine it seems like that might be, some people, or at least might think, boy, that sounds like it's going to be really tedious work to be able to put that together. Or at least, let's say, maybe not tedious, but labor intensive, maybe might be a better way to put it. I'm not sure.
For sure. And I guess it is what you love. I get to play with dolls and I'm really loving that. If I were doing it on the computer, some people do animation just via computer. That for me would be much harder than this physical manipulation. And my style is kind of scrappy. It's not perfect, and that suits me and my subjects fine. But yeah, it is labor intensive. I can't get them done that fast.
Yeah. Like I said, actually, I think I was mentioning before, even before we got on the interview today, that I've always been fascinated with movies. And I used to, way back when, there used to be a magazine called Premiere Magazine, and I loved reading it. And just everything about the entertainment industry has always interested me. But, I studied acting in college, but didn't do anything with it. So I just, closest I got was being able to work in television. So at least I have had that experience, but I love creativity and I think it's really cool. So now I want to get back to where I was starting to head. And, you talk about that you're dealing with fairy tales, and you mentioned also something about Jungian theory, Carl Jung, the psychologist. So what is it about that? A little bit, maybe expand on that theory, and then why you're focusing in on fairy tales.
Yes. So I've had two passions in my life: theater, drama, and psychology. And I was studying to be a counselor. So I have a lot of research and a lot of personal experience with the field of psychology. And Jung is the one that I love the best. For those people, Jungians, fairy tales are sort of like dreams of a culture, and they have a lot of embedded wisdom in them, supposedly. And so, fairy tales are just fun on a surface level, but
Right.
then we can start analyzing the characters as maybe being parts of ourselves, like parts of dreams. And I just thought, if I'm going to spend my time creating something that takes a long time, let me make sure that my basic material that I'm starting from has some goodness to it, some depth to it. And fairy tales are canonical. They have the goodness of thousands of years, sometimes at least hundreds of years. The Grail story, right? Centuries of people telling and exploring, what does it mean to search for the Holy Grail? I'm really living with that question right now. And so for me, it's a meditation, and hopefully for the people watching these films for 10 minutes or 15 or 4, whatever they are in that range, it becomes a meditation for them too, like a tarot card, right? It's images that maybe work on us consciously and unconsciously. That's my goal.
Yeah. And I can appreciate that. And I know I'm reading a book and I'm trying to remember the name of it. Oh, I know. It's something about women who run with the wolves.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, and it deals with like all of these stories and how women fit into them, and there's a lot of deep meaning to it, and it's a deep book to get through. I picked it up once, put it down, and it took me a couple of years, and I'm like, okay, let me see if I can do it again. So I'm endeavoring to go through it again, picking up where I left off. I guess the thing is that fairy tales do have these, I guess, really deal with a lot of archetypes and talking about, and as you say, there's symbolism and things in there. So how can we apply that, in our day-to-day life today? Because there's fairy tales, there's like Disney fairy tales and how they do it, but as someone who wants to be able to maybe appreciate the deeper meaning behind some of these, what would you say to that?
Great question. So I think it's a process. I think that sometimes maybe we have a dream, a nighttime dream, or we see a work of art or a play or a novel, and we don't really get how it applies to our life for a really long time. But I hope you and your listeners have had the experience I've had, which is a sudden kind of aha, where you go, whoa, I see how that relates to me. So I don't know that I can promise any fast thing, but I think if we stay with these stories that have depth to them, I guess I know from my journey of maybe the last 20 years, I get those ahas more and more often. But I think when we work, Jungians would say, when we work with the unconscious, we have to sort of be patient because it speaks a symbolic language that we don't generally speak. And so, but I think if we start to pay attention, then we start to get those ahas. I mean, I can.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to give you an example.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, I think my examples are sort of downers, but in Women Who Run with the Wolves, she talks about somewhere in there a wolf that chews its own leg off to escape a trap. And I remember a period in my life, and I was in a bad relationship, and that image suddenly made sense of why I did what I did. I metaphorically was chewing off my foot to escape that situation. And that insight helped me. I also have a very sad fairy tale that isn't on my website yet, but it's about woundedness. And I remember one day making dinner for my husband and going, oh my gosh, I have that wound. And that's why I did ABC. So, I don't have any happier ones that come to my mind, but those do.
Well, you know what though? But I think that's okay because sometimes, as they say, that awareness is what you need to be able to then make some changes in your life. And it is good to acknowledge that, oh yeah, I see that this wound is how that affected me. And the beauty of, well, maybe even the beauty of especially getting older, and hopefully we get wiser, is that we can then say, okay, well, yeah, that happened. And what do I want to do about it now? Do I want to stay just, wallowing in the woundedness, or can I see if there's any lesson I can take from that and move forward?
Yeah.
What do you think?
And the beauty of fairy tales, and they've done research, actual scientific research on people imbibing, taking in fairy tales. And, we say it's a happily ever after story. There is something about going through the trials of the hero and realizing that there is resilience, there is overcoming. And a lot of times these traditional fairy tales give us warnings about what to do or what not to do on our journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of them can be quite dark, because you said, because I do remember I actually have like a book of Grimm's fairy tales, and I think I actually went through it maybe when I was in high school or college or something, and going, wow. Some of these, they really are grim, even though that was the author's name, but it's like, I think I don't know if he was projecting onto there. Has there been, this is probably unfair asking you, because I know when you're creator that just like if you're a parent, you don't have any favorite children, we say. But, has there been maybe, one or two of these films that you've worked on that you felt really good about, like, oh, that one turned out really good, and you like the story or even just the process of putting it together?
Yeah, that is a hard one because I tend to love the ones I'm working on, but there is a wonderful one that's available. So my earlier films are now available to the public for free. And then my more recent ones are still in the film festival circuit, and they don't like you to release them publicly. But there is one for free that people can watch. It's called The Linguist. And it's based on a Grimm tale called The Three Languages. So that was The Linguist, The Three Languages. And it's pretty fun. I made the woman the lead instead of a man, and she learns the languages of the dogs, the birds, and the frogs, and how that helps her. And yeah, I am happy with the way that one turned out. Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in this creative process? Like, a couple of years from now, what do you think? Do you envision yourself continuing to do this, or do you think you'll evolve after? Because this certainly sounds like it was something that, especially the pandemic, even heightened or really gave you the opportunity, shall we say, to be able to pursue this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if I am in my own fairy tale, and that's always kind of cool, like, where are you at in this fairy tale? In my fairy tale, what's cool is that my passion for theater and my passion for psychology have come together. And so I think that this is my final career. Now, unfortunately, it's a gift to the universe, and there isn't really a lot of financial coming in yet. Yeah. I have a fantasy of having a Netflix channel that's devoted to animation or short films that are, there's a channel called the Gaia Film Channel.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a spiritual film channel,
right,
but it's mostly just documentaries. I don't think they do fiction really. So that's what I want. I want a fictional channel that's really focused on the spiritual journey and tools for that journey. And laughter is a tool for that journey. I try to make comedies as much as I can.
Well, you have spoken it out into the universe now. So, that's the first step in having it come to fruition. So
yeah,
I firmly believe in that. So you've got it out there now. So,
and you're the impetus then. So thank you.
Well, I hope if it happens, definitely call me. Let me know.
Yes.
That would be good.
Yes.
I don't, have you encountered any specific challenges along the way of doing this, especially launching this type, and what, and what has been one, and how did you wind up overcoming it?
I love that question. So for my day work these days, I'm coaching storytelling, and that's always the key. What is the challenge? Self-doubt. And I think, as creatives, we're constantly, I'll speak for myself, putting my work out there to festivals, and I have gotten into a lot but I get a lot of no thank yous. And man, oh man, it really can mess with my head. But recently I've been thinking about how a version of what you just said, which is really, we have to kind of keep putting it out there so that the world starts to understand what we're doing. I
Mhm.
think nobody's really doing what I'm doing. And so people don't always understand. And so, but that self-doubt and I'm a Capricorn, and kind of giving stuff away constantly without kind of the financial, that can get a little in my head too. Um, but my dreams and my prayers, they all tell me to keep going. So I
Well,
keep
good. I'm
going.
glad. And you do know about services like Patreon and things like that. Maybe you can, see if you can get some financial support that way. I would look
Right,
into it. Yeah, if you're
right.
not doing that already.
So I write grants, which is really
Okay.
hard.
Mm.
Patreon is a little harder for me since my stuff might come out 2, 3 times a year, maybe 4 if I'm lucky,
Okay.
not like a podcast where I can
Yeah.
return over. So that's one of my challenges too, to keep the faith in that way. But yeah, I feel like I've been given this task. So
Well, um,
like a fairy tale hero,
yeah,
you're in the unknown for a long time, and the fairy tale hero always comes to that moment of doubt. Joseph Campbell talks about that a lot.
that's right. Yeah, absolutely. So you just have to push through
Right.
and as you said, trust that I I like that you are sending it out there because I do believe that the right people will see it and
Mm,
you are doing this for a reason and it is to touch people's hearts and minds
mm.
and that eventually it will turn into something that will also benefit. Well, right now you are getting benefit because you at least you are getting the
Oh
creative
yeah.
benefit and we just have to trust that the universe will also help the financial benefit as well.
Right. Right.
Is there anything that you are curious about right now?
Wow. Another great question. Wow. Yeah, yeah. I continue to be curious about how people take in this work. I was blessed to be able to speak to a bunch of Jungian aficionados. And, does my work the way I think it works? And I'm getting the feedback that it does, but I continue to remain curious. Could it work for teachers? I've written curriculum for teachers because the cool thing about updating fairy tales is that students can go, oh, look at the original and look at the new. And then I can say, make your own now. Mine are pretty scrappy. You can make one. So I'm curious, like you say, the practical applications of a creative work.
Yeah, that's that I like that idea because I could certainly see that it could be utilized in college. It could even be utilized in high schools as well.
Mhm.
And just as a fun and an exploratory way and a way of being able to help kids understand themselves
Mm.
better and then also perhaps get them interested in the creative arts as well. So there could be lots of applications for that. So yeah, that sounds good. I like that. Let's see. I'm trying to think what else I want to ask you because I do find. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. So, how did you land on Barbies? I mean, did you have Barbies around in the house still from when you were a kid? Because I know I sold all mine off, and I had some really old ones that were my sister's, and I
Ooh.
kicked myself now. I had Barbie with black hair. That's how old that Barbie was, for one thing.
Ooh. Wow. No, I didn't have Barbies. I started purchasing, and I did that because I'm a writer, I'm a director, now I'm a filmmaker, but I'm not an artist to make like my own clay figures. That's not really, that would take forever. So what's cool about the Barbies is I can buy ones that articulate all of their limbs. I learned that the hard way. My first Barbies, their legs didn't bend, their arms didn't bend. And you can buy a Barbie almost anything, Barbie treadmill, Barbie vet office, so it can get expensive, but I try to buy used. And yeah, now I have a whole wall of them
Wow.
and a whole bunch of characters. And it's like a repertory theater troupe, because I can remember this G.I. Joe was in 3 films and he played all these different characters. And my husband does the same thing. He goes, I remember him. Like, they really do start to feel very real.
So cool. I love that. Um, I I just love this. It tickles me no end that you're doing
Yeah.
this, and what a great way to be able to utilize something that is, so ubiquitous, and to be able to give it a new lease on life, shall we say, and giving them all sorts of new ways to play. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
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 Um, is there um Is there anything else that you think our listeners and the viewers on YouTube should know about, about fairy tales and maybe their usefulness, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I do want to repeat this idea that when we watch a fairy tale or read a fairy tale, to ask ourselves, where am I at? Where is my life at in this fairy tale? Can be a really provocative, yummy question, because then watching what happens next could give me some feedback on what I can do or maybe shouldn't do in terms of wisdom. And so there's a fairy tale called The Shoemaker and the Elves, the Elves and the Shoemaker.
Yes, yes, I
Kind
know
of a
that
famous
story.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the shoemaker doesn't have very much left and he goes to sleep and the elves make the shoes for him. And for me, this fairy tale is a really great reminder of not expecting my waking ego mindset to solve all the problems and to open up to the greater wisdom of the unconscious that often happens during sleep. And this
Mhm.
is a reminder I need, because I'm a pretty willful person. Artists have to be, because we have to plow through the inertia to create, right? So the artist as willful I need to remember that kind of surrendering. So I guess I think, like any kind of art, the more we play with it, the more we'll see in it. So that's what I would say.
Love that. And it's true. And I think especially even, in my audience, there's a lot of women entrepreneurs, and I know
Mm,
that a lot of times you'll get an idea and you want to be able to implement it, but you're not sure how to do it. And that's really what you're talking about, is being able to let go of the how and just trust that as long as you're starting to take steps towards that goal, or towards that whatever it is that you're wanting to achieve, that the universe will provide the resources for you, or provide you with some additional insight that you can start saying, oh, that's how I could do this. And I've had that happen to me. And I love it when that happens, because it's a lot less stressful when you can let go and just say, okay, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to trust that it does. And then it does. So it's really nice feeling to know that you don't have to always be in control, even though, like you, I do like to do that too.
yeah, yeah, I'm used to doing that. But so many fairy tales, the hero achieves not because of their strength or skill, but because some helper came. And so, yeah, being more open to that.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, I have really enjoyed our talk, and I'm sure that people listening and watching are be like, okay, well, I'm really curious now. I want to be able to see some of these films. So where can people go to see the free ones that you have available?
Of course, yes. So the easiest for your listeners is just my name, Laura, Laura, Lewis, Lewis, Barr, Barr, Laura Lewis-Barr Films.com. And middle of the page, you should see a link to the free films. And there's a lot of other things on there. But yeah, I would love thoughts if people have thoughts. Yep. I'm very active on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. So yeah.
Excellent. And well, actually, I'm going to ask you one more follow-up question. So do you take requests of ideas for,
Oh,
like,
yes.
can you do this fairy tale?
No one's ever done that. I'd love that. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, you heard it here first. So if you have an idea, contact Laura. You can reach out to her on social media and do that. So that'd be great. So thank you again for being here. And I love the work you're doing. And I just think it's really neat and creative. And so keep doing the good work, and you're gonna get noticed, I know.
Gloria, thank you. Thank you for your support, your time. I love your show. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. And I thank all of you who are out there watching and listening. And if you got some value out of today's episode, or you liked it a lot, I hope that if you're not a subscriber already, that you are. And it would be wonderful if you would share this episode with a friend as well. So we can let other people know about it and find out about Laura and her awesome films. So until next time, as always, I encourage you to go out today and every day and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.